Hello! Today we'll be having a look at what's inside this exciting looking box from SJRC, but just before we get into that, a quick reminder, please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it, comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find that little bell icon, click on it and something may happen. Hopefully my videos will appear on your feed, that's the idea anyway. Anyway, this is the F11 or F11 from SJRC, and it was kindly supplied for review by Cafago, or Cafago, I don't know how you say it. This is your toy grade quad, trying to do the sort of cheaper version of the Mavic type from DJI. It is 2-axis mechanical gimbal, which I'm thinking not as good. Claims to be 4K again, but the difference with this one versus some of the others where 4K is the photo resolution, I checked out the spec of this and the video resolution, if you're using the SD card, is 4K, so that'd be interesting to see. Anyway, haven't got it out of the box yet. I've been sitting on this for a couple of weeks because we haven't been allowed out to fly. We are now allowed out to fly. That said, I haven't been to the field, so I don't know A, if I can walk that far, and B, if the field's still there, but you know, we'll check that out. Let's open the box and see what's in there. I haven't opened this before. Like I said, it's sitting in the corner of my office, but there's a bag inside. And inside the bag, there is a bag. I don't know if it's going to carry on like this for much longer, but yeah, this looks quite nice. Nice little carry case. Got a handle, it's got zips. Good for carrying these things around. You can just plop them away in one place and take it places. Unzipping this and looking inside, ooh, is our quad and stuff. Let's get stuff out and have a better look. Here's the quad. Pretty familiar looking. There have been quite a lot of these sort of quads with the same sort of folding arms and very similar looking. If we unfold this guy, we get this. So quite similar in terms of the arm folding design to a lot of the thing. There is a gimbal cover here. It's got a sticker to say how to remove the cover. And that is our 2-axis gimbal. It's kind of shock mounted, so it bounces about a bit. Obviously there's no yaw axis. It looks like it potentially looked down all the way. Got SD card here. What is a little bit different, and this is a different design, is normally the battery would go here. You can see the battery looks like it's here. We've got the power button and the indicator. You get one light there. We've got a USB slot there, and battery wise looks like it's a press and pull upwards, and that is the battery. This is labelled as a 2500 mAh 3S battery. Normally these things are driven by 2S, so this is interesting. It's a little bit bigger. This claims to have up to 26 minutes flight time. Previously in this type of quad it's been sort of at least 5 or 10 minutes below what it's been spec'd as, so it'll be useful to see exactly how much it can do. But that is the quad. Also in the bag is this controller. Pretty obvious where your phone goes, up on that bit, and you've got these little arms to help you hold it, as well as these two fold out antennas which you can orientate around. Sticks are sprung to the centre, they feel pretty good. There's got two slider type things here, 2 extra buttons, and it looks like we've got a stop button, a power button, return to home, and I think that looks like some sort of circle mode. Obviously most of the functionality generally comes from the phone. It looks like this is a screen where it sort of lights up these little parts of the LCD, but okay, that feels alright. I know you've got a set of spare props, and in the top of the bag there's a little manual. I don't know why it comes in a box. It seems like you could just put the manual. Quite a thin little manual for what it's got. I don't know if we're going to expect some QR codes for a bigger manual. It's got all the normal things like return to home and a follow me function and the nav points and stuff like that. Obviously there's an app, and on the side of the box you can see the QR code for Android and iOS. I'll obviously download that and see what I need to do. I'll have a quick go in the garden just to make sure it all makes sense to me, and then we'll actually go outside and fly it. This thing claims to have up to about 1500 meter range. It says it's got electronic image stabilization, which should be interesting because without that yaw gimbal, things can get a little bit shaky, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, let's get testing. So we're out here in the garden because before we fly this thing properly, we of course need to do compass calibration and stuff, and I thought this would be a handy place to do it. So that's as it needs formatting. Okay, cool. Now this is the first thing we need to do is the compass calibration. Does it say it's just going to happen? Push joysticks, 11 o'clock. Comes calibration. I'll make I rotate it horizontally.
Face up, face down.
So in this we've got ready to fly, we've got a satellite indication, we're on, I suppose that's video, try recording, yep, GPS mode, so that's me, and if I use, try and stay in focus, it's a bit windy, if I use this button, I zoom in, but I presume it's just a digital zoom. There you go, that's fun. And this appears to alter the gimbal, albeit quite at a funny rate. It sort of starts off slow and then it speeds up. Oh, okay. That looks alright so far. 12.5 volts battery wise, which is good. You can see how long this goes for. It's got no yaw on the gimbal. It's not doing a bad job at all, I think. How far can we look down? Let's have a look. No, that's the wrong one. Not quite all the way down, but it doesn't do a bad job. Really good job on that gimbal actually. Space Marines do the same. Yours a little bit slow, but the rest of it's pretty good. Yeah, you can see the yours did a pretty good job there. I mean the gimbal. And it goes back and forth.
So obviously this is just a garden hover, I just wanted to test stuff out, but also time how long it would fly for, and to my great surprise and joy, it did manage 26 minutes. I think it was like 25:50 something, it got very close. Of course this is just hovering, it's not proper flying, but the other thing I want to do is take you through some of the stats I got about recording video of this and see how it did. So whenever you hit record or take a photo, it will record to your phone and record to the SD card if you've got one, and this is the phone recording from video, and it does it in 720p, so that's 1080 by 720, 30 frames per second with a data rate of about 2.77 megabits per second according to what QuickTime tells me, which is I think a fairly good recording just for the phone, because you don't have to do anything extra and you've always got it there. Now here's that almost the same clip as recorded the SD card, and this is doing proper 4K resolution, so it's 3840 by 2160, we get 30 frames per second, and the data rate is 41.87 megabits per second. I did notice it seemed a little bit noisy, and I wasn't sure if this is just because I'm filming in the garden and there's not much contrast, or it's a bit of an overcast day, but I did pick that up. But in terms of the sort of clarity and vibrations, I think it's doing a very good job. There's obviously some electronic image stabilization going on here, because I'm not seeing any sort of vibrations that I'd expect, especially with no gimbal on the yaw. For still pictures, you can use the control or the screen, and when you press the button, it does this slightly weird thing where it gets the picture, so you sort of freeze up for a while before it comes back again. And that gives this resulting picture on the iPhone, which is interesting because it's slightly more stretched out, which sort of brings the aspect more normal. It is 3840 by 2160, which is the same resolution that takes it on the SD card, but I found the SD card's much better quality. So the size of this image was about 1.5 megabytes, and if we now move over to the one that got recorded on the SD card, firstly I notice it's not exactly the same. I don't know if this is sending the photo to the iPhone and then it takes a photo for the SD card, but it's also seems to be a wider angle and is much better quality. It's the same resolution, but this image is 3.2 megabytes, which is obviously there's more there to it, so it certainly looks a lot clearer, but it's there on the phone just in case you want it. And for the last bit of the garden footage, what I want to talk about again with the battery is this little bar. You see that bar just changed from yellow to red, and if you looked earlier it was way out across the right hand of the screen. This bar basically says how much battery you've got, and I want to see how conservative the battery was in terms of saying it was low, and it is pretty conservative. It's telling us at 11 volts it wants us to land. I would normally fly a 3S down to 10.5 before I got worried, but this is quite conservative, so even at that we're getting a decent flight time. Anyway, onto a proper field now.
Just before we go into proper testing, I realised that when I was looking at the footage of me looking at this, it really didn't show up very well, and so I thought I'd show you around it and tell you what it did, because it's got these little lights that light up, but they're quite hard to see outdoors. Certainly on camera, they're not that easy to see anyway, especially with my eyesight, but I just wanted to show you this one. Obviously GPS mode lights up if it's GPS mode. You've then got this button which changes the rates. We're in normal mode at the moment. We can change that to sport mode, which is where the quad will go faster, or camera mode where you get less of a rate and it goes a bit slower. You've got a stop button which just lands it as it is. This is a return to home button. You'll see the return to home lights up there. You've got the regular sticks. That's obviously where your phone goes. And then on the sides here you've got a photo button. Press your photo button. The photo lights up and take a photo. You've got this button here that starts and stops video. Although I did notice in my testing in the garden it would constantly beep to say I'm recording video, which was annoying, a bit like it's doing now. So I generally use the app to turn it off. And then you've got the zoom, and when you twiddle it you'll notice this little light momentarily light up, which is a bit pointless, and this is for the gimbal to look up and down. Again, you've got a little light there. So the only one that I really used is this one to change the rates, and that one because that's a very convenient way of doing return to home. Anyway, on with the testing.
Right at the start of this video I was saying about how I couldn't go out and fly because we had COVID lockdown. What happened is the lockdown finished and then the field I normally used had been built on, so I didn't have a field until I managed to get permission to fly in this one. Now the reason I should also explain that I've just got the phone recording with the GoPro stuff over the top is in this initial flight, which I'm just about to test return to home, I forgot to hit record, so the only recording I got of it is the screen recording of the video that's passed back to me. But I thought I wanted to show the return home stuff anyway. The only thing confusing me this is the radar screen on the bottom left, which doesn't seem to make all that much sense, but I'll hand over to myself in the field. Okay, so we've just taken off. We're about 130 metres away. Let's just get to the edge of this field and we'll do a return to home, see what happens. Okay, so let's hit the home button now. 183 metres away. Seems to turn around straight towards me. Seems to be coming back at a reasonable pace. You can see it quite nicely. I didn't give much space in terms of if it's slightly out, that could be a problem, but let's see how it does. Certainly seems to be doing the job. See if it stops above us.
Nice and quick getting back. Looks like it's going to miss this target slightly. Oh. Well, I was going to say super accurate. Slightly unfortunate that it's just caught the prop there, but we've got a little tiny nick out of one bit. That's not gonna hurt it. So let's arm up again. Have another bit of a look around. Feels quite sporty. You can definitely tell this is 3S instead of the normal 2S. This is in normal road rather than sport mode, and it's really kicking ass in terms of the speed. Okay, so just to explain again, I still haven't noticed that I haven't hit the record button, which is pretty stupid of me, admittedly. What I'm doing here is I decided to do a range test, which is interesting because it does get interesting fairly quickly. What's going to happen is we get a lockup of, well, what looks like a lockup. Essentially, we've lost communication with the quad from the phone at 400 and something meters. I hit return to home. I'm hoping it's coming back, but we never recovered the signal. And this is because what happened is my phone jumped onto the Wi-Fi signal from my GoPro, so it never actually recovered. In a proper situation, I think it would, but I didn't have a chance to test that, so I'll leave it to me to explain further, and you can listen to the awkward pause where I'm just not sure if it's coming back or what's happening at all. I seem to have a freeze up on the screen there. So we're doing a return to home. Nothing coming through from it at the moment. Well, here's a bit of a worry. Oh, there it is. But the screen is completely locked up here. I've still got viewing over there. So let's see if I can take it out of return home mode. This seems to have gone completely. And the moral of this story is watch out for other networks that your phone may join, because if it does, it won't rejoin your drone. After the reset, I finally noticed I'd forgotten to do the recording, so I'll be showing the HD footage from now on. At this point, I decided to try out some of the modes to see how they work. Okay, so we pop it up there. Look at us, and we have got GPS follow. Is it in GPS follow now? Maybe. Let's try. I'll try moving, see if it's going to come with me. Doesn't look like it's happening at the moment. GPS follow. Okay. tracking distance. That didn't work. Check the manual in a second. Let's try the other one. Let's try image follow. No. Let's try and get this target. That's me. So this dude here. There's your image. Okay. Let's see if it tracks me. I'm moving. It's tracking me. Is it going to follow me? Oh, it's turned. Are you going to move forward? So he just, he's just going to let me walk away. Right, this is where I have to look at the book. So I'm like, what is it you're doing?
Yep, my luck or lack of it with follow me modes continue. I checked the manual before I set off and I double checked it again while I was at the field, and as far as I can see I wasn't doing anything wrong. The GPS follow wasn't sort of completing. As soon as you say GPS follow, it should come up with another box saying GPS follow ready. That just wasn't happening for whatever reason, even though my iPhone wasn't blocking out any signal or anything. And as far as I can see from the instructions, which are a little bit vague, the object mode follow should actually follow you. It was tracking around brilliantly. It could see me, it would turn, but it just would not set off and actually track me. I tried this for a good 10 minutes and I really didn't get anywhere, but I persevered and tried. I just couldn't make it work. But whilst I was messing around trying to get the modes to work, a tractor came past and I thought, well, that's a good opportunity to do a bit of a follow test, perhaps a more typical use of this sort of quad to see what would happen. So I decided to go up and have a little follow, and there was no point in showing the GoPro footage here because I'm just staring at the screen. There are a few things I do notice about this, some very positive, some not so positive. On the positive side, I found that the stability of the footage is really, really good. Anything that doesn't have stabilisation on the yaw axis, I suspect always you're going to have a bit of sort of to and froing, a sort of a bit like it's wobbling about. This looks really stable, and the other part of the gimbal's handling it really well. It all looks pretty good. I did find the yaw control a little bit oversensitive. It's like I just want to move the yaw a little touch. It just doesn't seem to have a sort of a very slow motion, if you like. It doesn't have a very fast one either. It's sort of just go or don't go almost on that point of view. We should also talk about the picture quality we're getting. As I said, proper 4K footage, which is great, but I am absolutely noticing that noise. I had a proper look at this, not just in my editor, but I've got a 5K screen at home to edit on, and I had a look at the uncompressed footage and I could see noise in it. Basically sort of little kind of noisy speckles in the grass, in the ground, all over the place really. So it's not the best camera in the world, but we're talking about a toy grade quad, so you kind of get what you pay for. And I always say this is a toy grade quad. If you want something serious and you want proper video, buy something from DJI. If you want something cheap and cheerful that does a fairly good job, then something like this is what you're more looking for. But certainly out of all the sort of toy grade quads I've flown, I think this has the most stable footage, which is interesting because the last two I've flown have been 3-axis gimbals and they just haven't been as good as this. The video, even though this is noisy, the video stability is good enough to say, you know what, I'd prefer this over the other ones. Of course, this doesn't quite seem to have the range that the others have. It sort of doesn't go great after about 400, 500 metres, which is, that's your legal line of sight limit anyway, so you could say it's keeping you legal. But really, these should be going to at least sort of kilometre and a half before they get into this sort of trouble. If you look at the screen recording here, you will see that we lose signal with the remote for a little while. It goes into return to home, but then it recovers the signal and carries on fine. That was just a one-off, and that didn't happen at a particularly big distance, just 234 metres away. Maybe it was the direction I was in. it seemed within plenty of line of sight and fine, so not quite sure, but yeah, keep it in range. And I was just exploring different parts of the field, actually behind myself here where you'd expect the signal to be worse, but as I said, I didn't have another dropout of the radio signal or the video signal. Everything was fine. What I want to do up here is just try and go up a little bit higher, do a panning shot, see how it felt. Of course, the higher up we get, the more windy it is. It wasn't a particularly windless day. There was certainly some gusts going on, so it did quite well managing this. I can't really see any particularly bad vibrations that's happening from the gimbal. Did pretty good job once again. Here's my yaw spin. Again, I'd like to be slightly more in control of that. But yeah, that's how it looked. The other thing I didn't like particularly is the two sliders. One is to do a zoom, which I felt particularly pointless. The other was to move the gimbal, and it felt just a little bit counterintuitive about the direction it went, and it also went really slow and then sped up. Instead of having sort of proportional control about how much you turn it, it seemed like it would just almost be a switch to say start slow and speed up if you keep it on, which I didn't particularly like, but it did an okay job. You can get your position of your camera right so you can look down on yourself as I'm doing here. It's just you didn't have a smooth control, and you can see that I'm fighting trying to get the right angle there. Because the battery went for so long, aside from coming back and trying the modes for Follow Me Again, I did found one that worked, which was the rotate around the point of interest. It took me a few goes to get what was happening, but I got it in the end, so I'll show it to you. First, what we do is we set our point. So let me stand under it. That's our point of interest. Then we fly out of it, like so. And then we say, start surround. Now, it should be looking at me because I'm the center point. Oh, this is better. This is actually doing a pretty good job. That's quite nice. Kind of lost its way a little bit there. Let's come back around. So let's take that out. Surround exit, there we go. Okay, so the situation is some stuff works pretty good. And some stuff doesn't. I think that's the best way we can say it. There would have been a little bit more footage from this, but the last file on the SD card seems to be corrupted and I can't read it. As I was just taking a few photos to try and use as a thumbnail, the quad hit its low voltage alarm and decided it was going to go back and land. Again, we got pretty close to 26 minutes from this, even though we were doing lots of messing about and going further distances, which again, pretty good battery overall for such a quad. I think a real benefit having 3S there. Well, there you go, and I think it did pretty good, and certainly the best of the toy grade cinema drones you talk about. People get a bit hung up on the term toy grade quads. They think I'm talking about these tiny things. It's basically something that's just not hobby grade, it's just a distinction. This doesn't compare to the DJI stuff, and nor would it do very favourably, so this is toy grade, other stuff's hobby grade. Anyway, this did well in a particular few areas which I really wanted to highlight. First off, this is just a 2-axis gimbal, but the stability this one had is over and above anything I've seen before. Just recently I reviewed another one like this, which is this, the ZLRC Beast Max SG9. All these things have the most awful names in the world and I can't remember it. This had a 3-axis gimbal, but the footage from this is shaky as you like. You can see it in this footage I'll show you. Also, this lied about its resolution it recorded in. It
said it would get over 20 minutes of flight. It barely got 12, mostly I think because it uses a 2S battery. This 3S battery, it held up to the 26 minutes it promised, which is really nice. Obviously if you were out flying, it'd probably be nice to have a couple of batteries, but if you only had one, at least you're not sort of down in 10 minutes, which is good. Take a big old time to charge these through USB. It mentions about 4.5 hours. I don't know how long I left it, but a fair old while. I felt the controller was quite good. The app was nice and clear. Of course, some of the stuff didn't work. I've yet to have one of these things follow me. It does a great job of putting a box around me and saying, there you are, you're over there. Does it ever come towards me? No. And the GPS follow didn't work. There are a couple of things I didn't test. One is the Waypoint Flying, where you just point to bits on the map and it flies around. It had another interesting feature as well about being able to find your drone if it goes down. Basically, I think what happens is it records the last position on the phone, and then you can go onto part of the app, and it was here, and it sort of draws the spot on the map, and you can go and find it, which is quite handy. As to the things I didn't like, it's noisy. The footage we get is noisy. Now I'm having to talk about this having not seen it uploaded to YouTube. What happens is I'll look at the footage, it will look a certain way, it'll go to YouTube, YouTube will put it through its compression algorithm, it will slightly change. Normally it makes DVR footage look very bad. When I'm uploading in 4K, it's not quite as bad, but yeah, there's noise, there's sort of speckly, noisy footage. Now, why is that? Because it's very smooth, absolutely. Is it because this isn't a real 4K sensor and it's something like a 720p or a 1080p sensor and then that's being scaled? I don't know. I would much prefer much sharper, nicer 1080p than noisy 4K footage. I get the feeling people say, oh, it's 4K, hooray, because people want to see like the best specs. But it would be much nice to have much clearer, less noisy footage in a lower resolution than bad footage in 4K. That said, I'm still saying this is the best ever of the toy grade quads I've had, just because of that smoothness. I'm ignoring the noise and I'm saying this is nice and smooth. That trumps everything else essentially. We had some slight range issues. This topped out on my phone as something around 400 meters. Said on the website it reckoned the visual would get to 800 meters and then the control signal 1.5 kilometers, which is a bit pointless because if you've lost video, there's no point in having a control signal. I didn't have an opportunity to test that properly because what happened is it lost contact with the phone and then the phone jumped onto a different network, which happened to be my GoPro, which was less than useful. But I would say conservatively you'd probably want to keep this within 400-500 meters to be safe. You saw one of the things where the control signal just blipped out and came back again, so it's not going to take you kilometers, but it's like within your visual range essentially. Of course the footage is nothing like the sort of quality you're going to get on a DJI, but at the moment this is still half the price of something like a Mavic Mini and, you know, less than a quarter of the price of something like a Mavic Air 2. So if you are a casual wanting to get into it, what's this all about, flying and don't want to spend a lot of money, then something like this is very nice. And certainly, despite it only having a 2-axis gimbal, this is the smoothest of the bunch I've seen. So certainly worth checking out if you're in the market for this type of quad. Anyway, this was very kindly supplied by Cafago for review. I have to apologise for them because it's been so long me getting this out. They said it months ago, and between lockdown, losing my field and everything else, it's been a while. But I'm glad I stuck with it because it's turned out to be the best of this type of quad that I've managed to fly. So that's quite nice. Of course, there'll be links down below where you can check it out in more detail. But until that time, this has been, and I'm having to read this off the screen, the SJRC F11 Pro 5G Wi-Fi FPV GPS RC 4K camera 2-axis gimbal with storage bag. I think we just call it the F11 for short. I hope that's been helpful. I'll catch you next one. Catch you later. Bye.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.